Welcome back to episode 11 of The Fourth Bag. I'm here again with Dean Lang. Dean, thank you for joining us. Did you manage to find a beer for today?
I did, Chris. We got some Letterkenny puppers.
Perfect. I have a Budweiser Zero, near beer, but kind of beer. Cheers, buddy.
All right.
So you didn't have beer when you were at the place you were staying in out west, but was there beer at the wedding?
Oh yeah, there was lots of beer at the wedding. There was a keg at the barbecue on Friday, two kegs at the barbecue on Friday night, and there was an open bar on Saturday. So yeah, I managed to get enough beer on the weekend.
And I remember you telling me like the veil was just something to be seen. Eh? So like, not your typical veil for a wedding bride. Tell me about this veil.
Yeah, my sister wore a stormtrooper helmet as her veil. I mean, like she's a diehard Star Wars fan. I mean, she named her dogs Leia and Solo. What does that tell you? I mean, it fits Rosie perfectly to wear a stormtrooper helmet as her veil.
Well, congratulations to them. I'm glad everybody who was supposed to get married got married. That's always, number one. Make sure everybody leaves happy. So the rest of your trip, anything else to note while you're out west?
I mean, not really. It was pretty standard stuff. Nothing. I mean, like the wedding was the whole crux of the trip. So nothing else of note really happened. I mean, the I did purchase some Nanaimo bars in Nanaimo, although they were store bought, not a bakery. But Nanaimo bars in Nanaimo. That's
I have a soft spot for Nanaimo bars. It's one of my favorite desserts. So, add it to the list of things to randomly bring back for me from your vacations. I do enjoy myself a good Nanaimo bar. The for me last week for my fantasy team, I sort of lost when we talked about Trey Lance and Kirk Cousins, and I was saying, Dean, which one should I go with? And you're like, Kirk Cousins. And if I told you, Dean, Kirk Cousins had 3 interceptions and a touchdown and barely cracked, 15 fantasy points, but he outdid Trey Lance because Trey Lance left with a broken ankle. So, I mean, not the way you dialed it up, but it certainly was the right choice. Unfortunately for me, I ran into Stephon Diggs. And if you watch Monday Night Football, the Bills are just on fire. They are running on all cylinders. They have Miami this week, and Miami last week, they were part of just like one of a few comebacks that was just really exciting to watch. I sat down and watched Red Zone, and I could not believe that the Dolphins came back and won that game.
Oh yeah, Chris. I mean, Kirk Cousins had nothing for the second half. No, he didn't have anything even remotely resembling a comeback in him. But it was comeback weekend on Sunday in the NFL. I mean, shit, we had Arizona down 23-7 in the fourth quarter against the Raiders, two-point converted touchdowns, and they win with a defensive touchdown in overtime. You had the Dolphins down 35-14 going to the fourth quarter against the Baltimore Ravens. Miami outscored them 28-3. Tua had a career day, 6 touchdown passes.
It just felt like if you bet on the overs in that game, with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, they both had just monster days. And shout out to my brother Mike. My brother Mike definitely did bet on the overs, and he sweated a comeback, and he's a few $100s sure thanks to his Homer Dolphins ticket that he made. And then there was one more comeback, the Jets. The Jets, didn't they recover an onside kick and just like 2 touchdowns late? Like, what a ridiculous way to end the game. How do you blow a game like that?
Well, I mean, first of all, Cleveland, I mean, Nick Chubb could have gone down at the 1 yard line and they could have kneeled it out instead of going in the end zone. I mean, there was that there. So, yeah, I mean, he made his fantasy geeks happy, but I think the fans ended up pretty unhappy. I know some people who went to that Browns game. They said people were going home when it was 30-17. They missed the extra point. They blew the spread. They blew the game. They killed the survivor pool for a bunch of people. More on that later. The Jets.
Speaking of blowing the spread, I know last week you were 5-0 picking the winners, but 3 of them you picked the spread correctly. 2 of them you had the Broncos and the Rams that weren't able to cover. And the Falcons just came back, made it 31-27. You had them by, was it 10.5 points? And that just didn't work out.
Yeah, Chris, the most costly comeback for me last week was the near comeback in that Rams Falcons game. I mean, the Rams were up 28-3 in the third quarter, and in that second half, they had an interception, a lost fumble, and a blocked punt returned for a touchdown. Now the other two weren't returned for touchdowns; they just happened. But yeah, that's a lot of miscues in one half of football, and I mean, you don't think that 28-3 Rams that the Falcons are going to have the ball with a chance to win the game. But yep, that was definitely. I mean, that was a big comeback. It just didn't quite get completed.
Now I know you like your golf, and you like your golf history, and I will have to admit I had to Google these two things, but you were mentioning the '96 Masters with Greg Norman, and then the 2011 Masters with Rory McIlroy. I went back and I watched some interviews with Greg Norman, and I watched sort of how those things came to be, and I was a little bit shocked at how somebody can blow the Masters like that. Tell me about Greg Norman's collapse in '96, and what do you think about that compared to the 2011 Rory collapse?
Well, Chris, I mean, on this weekend of comebacks in the NFL, it's a great time to talk about these two and compare and contrast these two meltdowns. So Norman's comeback or his collapse is certainly more iconic. It's really kind of stood the test of time. I mean, there was a 30 for 30 documentary that I watched earlier this year that talked about it. So Norman had a 6-stroke lead going to the final round and shot a 78. And I mean, it was, it was definitely famous. But McIlroy's collapse is definitely worse in my mind. I mean, he had a 4-stroke lead, but shot an 80. And he finished tied for 15th, while Norman at least still finished second.
And Greg Norman in that Masters, I was listening to that interview. He was saying that one of the commentators mentioned how he was changing his grip, and he would, changing your swing before a big tournament like that just didn't seem like a good thing. And he might have had some personal issues, and whether it was sort of in his head, he got in his head. Like it when he put that ball in the water, like, was it the 17th hole? He just dunked it, and you just think one shot here and there, and that just seemed like a big one.
Yeah. Oh, that was the 16th hole. Yeah. When he got wet at 16, that was the end of it. He was 2 strokes back going to that 16th. He still had an opportunity to make it happen, but not after that. He didn't.
And you mentioned the iconic collapse, you watch him trying with chip in for eagle and seeing him just melt to the ground, like he thought he had it and then he missed that. There's just I'm sure there's memes all over the place for that one.
Yep, definitely. Well, that was 1996 before memes were a thing. Actually, even the internet wasn't a thing in April of '96 yet. But oh yeah, if that happened in the meme age, there would be meme after meme after meme, without question. It was it goes into depth. That 30 for 30 goes into depth about that '96 Masters, about things that were in his head. I think he probably had some kind of back issue going into that final round. I mean, that '96, he was banged up that year. He had missed the cut in the Bay Hill Invitational and the Players Championship before the Masters. He hadn't missed a cut in 3 years before that. And he ended up missing 6 cuts for the year because his back problems kept flaring up. I mean, I don't know if he's ever said anything about having back spasms that day, but it wouldn't surprise me if there were. And just the way he talked about how he felt like he had the right yardage and it was just a half a club short. But I mean, as iconic as it is, for Rory to have a 4-stroke lead and not even finish in the top 10, that's I don't know how that hasn't been talked about the same way now. I mean, I guess because he was nowhere near the lead at the end of the day, and Norman still had a chance going to 16, and he still finished second, and he finished second to his biggest rival, Nick Faldo. That's obviously why that one gets talked about a lot more. But
right.
When McIlroy's 80 was the worst round on the course that day by 2 strokes. And then the next worst guy was 2 strokes better than that. So there was one guy who shot 78, one guy who shot 76, and McIlroy shot 80. Norman's 78 wasn't even the worst on the course that day.
My 2 cents, I feel like Norman literally collapsed after that failed eagle And so kind of like for me, that's the bigger collapse because there's that moment. Whereas Rory just like he flat out just choked and just didn't finish, and finishing outside the top 10. I mean, that's rough.
Norman's collapse is definitely the more memorable one, but Rory's is the worst collapse. And
Okay.
I think we can meet on that.
Fair. Okay, so the President's Cup is this weekend, and typically when I watch these sort of team golf events, I'll get into the Ryder Cup because the Ryder Cup has it just has that like mantra behind it, kind of like the Masters. It's just an enjoyable tournament to watch for me. I'll admit I'm not a President's Cup fan, but I did see that we got Canadian Corey Connors playing. He's a rookie on the international team, so that's exciting. Maybe I'll watch a little bit of that. Is this something that you're going to be betting on this weekend, or something you'll just sort of sit back and enjoy?
I do have some bets on the matches this afternoon. Another Canadian in it is Taylor Pendrith. I mean, with all the top international players defecting to live, they were rendered ineligible. That's Abraham Ancer, Joaquin Neiman, Louis Oosthuizen, Cameron Smith, of course, and Mark Leishman. And those are all guys that would have been on this team if not for the whole live thing. And so, I mean, the international side is definitely a weaker side. The U.S. is a prohibitive favorite here, and for good reason. The rosters, there's a disparity in talent in the rosters. I mean, the U.S. is down some mainstays from previous years. DeChambeau, Patrick Reed, Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, but they're not the players they were, the last time the President's Cup happened, or even a couple of years ago. But the U.S. is still deep, and they're winning all 5 matches in this first session today.
And are you backing the lead, like backing the U.S. in this with your bets? Are you parlaying them all together? Like, what type of bets are you throwing down on the President's Cup?
So for today, I bet individual bets on the matches. I took all 5 U.S. matches, expecting they'll probably be like 3.5 to 1.5. I don't see which. I mean, you never know what can happen in a President's Cup match, in a match play, alternate shot, but it's hard to see the U.S. coming out of this with anything less than a 3.5 to 1.5 lead.
Sounds like it was easy money that I missed out on.
Well, I don't know. You never know. We'll see. It's far from over. I mean, most of the matches are around the turn. Actually, every match is between the 8th or the 9th and the 12th hole. So every match is still kind of in the middle there.
So if we moving on, I want to move on to our week 3 picks. I do have a bet for tonight, and it's actually ironic you mentioned Nick Chubb falling into the end zone by accident or whatever last week, because I threw a bet on the Browns tonight and the under Nick Chubb to get a touchdown. And then my gambling instincts get me to like, that's only like a 6x return. And I just start clicking buttons like, oh, let's just add an interception for Mitch Trubisky and let's just throw this in. And before you know it, my parlay becomes like 60, 80x. So I'm like, all right, $1. It's a sweat. Leave it at that. You're much more succinct with your picks. And so let's go through. We've got 5 games to talk about. The first game is going to be the Bengals, and the Bengals are at the Jets. The winless Bengals are at the Jets. And you like the Bengals -5.
I do, Chris. The Jets are coming off of that completely unexpected win. That win they shouldn't have gotten. If Chubb just goes down at the 1-yard line instead of going in for the touchdown, Cleveland wins that game. I mean, the Bengals are coming off 2 losses in a row. They were both last-second field goal losses. I mean, they were right in the game against the Steelers and the Cowboys, both of whom are better than the Jets. And the offensive line has called itself out for Cincinnati this week. They said, we got to do better. And I expect them to do better, and I expect Burrow to have a big day, and Cincinnati should win this one fairly easily.
I do like the Bengals as well. I don't see the Bengals as an 0-3 team, and I don't see the Jets making the Bengals 0-3 team. So I got to agree with you. I like the Bengals there. Next, you got a couple of 1-1 teams. So the Ravens are at New England. You got the Ravens -2.5.
Yep, the Ravens -2.5. I figure their defense is going to be pretty upset about that fourth quarter meltdown. I mean, when you allow a 28-point quarter You want to come back and you want to right that wrong the next week. Oh, I mean, you can't make up for what happened, but you want to step up and you want to redeem yourself. And I mean, New England's not a strong offensive team. They've managed 24 points combined in the two games against Miami and Pittsburgh. So the Ravens should be able to keep New England in check. And New England struggles with mobile quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson. So Baltimore should be able to score enough points to win this one.
I do like New England at home. I do like Bill Belichick. I like his ability to sort of, get script and do his thing. But at the end of the day, the Ravens just put up points and New England doesn't put up points. And so, I think the points are going to count here, and the Ravens, I think they are going to take that one as well. So again, I'll agree with you there. Next game you got on the list here is the Panthers, and you've got them plus 2.5, and they're home to the Saints.
That's right. Panthers have had two late losses by 2 and 3 points. They lost to Cleveland on a 58-yard field goal, and they lost to the Giants on a late field goal. And I mean, those teams are both kind of on the same level as New Orleans, I would say. Carolina's at home. They're desperate. They're playing a dome team outside. And Jameis Winston has back issues, and his left tackle is out. So, I mean, Carolina's got a dominant pass rush. That's probably their biggest asset as a team. And they should be able to exploit that right there. And they should be able to win a game they need to win, because they're not a bad team. They're a team that, I mean, in the watered down NFC could still make something happen if McCaffrey can stay healthy.
Yeah, when I first saw that pick and I thought the Panthers and the Saints, I'm this closet Saints fan. I do like the Saints, but they didn't look good last week against Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady finally broke that, regular season curse, if you will, against the Saints. And so you know what? I'm gonna give you another sort of check mark for me. Not that you need my seal of approval, but I do think that the Panthers is a good shot there. The next one, I'm gonna need an explanation for this one. You've got the Colts, the winless Colts, who just got shut out by the Jags, playing the red hot Kansas City Chiefs, and you like the Colts to cover 5.5. Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, first of all, this wasn't a great week in terms of finding picks that I really liked. I mean, there's a whole bunch of games that I like a little bit, but as far as that one goes, yeah, Indianapolis got shut out against Jacksonville, but that means they got embarrassed. Matt Ryan, this is his home opener now with the Colts, and they were down their two best receivers. Certainly, Michael Pittman Jr. is their best receiver, and Alec Pierce is arguably the second best receiver. They were down both those guys against Jacksonville. And Shaquille Leonard looks like he's returning to action. He's a stud linebacker. So they're getting a little bit healthier. So I mean, Matt Ryan's going to get guys who can actually get open. The Chiefs' defense is suspect, right? They give up yards. And I mean, Indianapolis is a team that's hungry to, being 24-0 to Jacksonville is embarrassing. So, I mean, if it's 5.5 at home, I mean, even if they're down 10 with a couple minutes to go, Ryan can still get that backdoor cover, just like the Chargers did.
All right, I like it. I can see where you're going with that. And the last one, you've got the 2-0 Eagles against we'll call them Washington Commanders football team, whatever. It's in Washington. The Eagles are 6.5-point favorites, and you like them to cover.
Yep. Yeah, they look dominant on Monday night against Minnesota. Just completely whooped them on both sides of the ball. Hurts looks like he's making those strides now that he's got really good talent around him. And I mean, the Commanders' defense has not looked good these 2 weeks. Detroit put up big numbers. Jacksonville put up some numbers when they weren't getting picked off. Philadelphia should be able to put up well into the 30s here, and they have a solid defense. They should be able to win this one pretty comfortably. Again, there were a whole bunch of games that I like a little bit this week. Like, I mean, I like the Giants a little bit against Dallas in the Monday nighter, and the Bears a little against the Texans, the Rams against Arizona. But it's just there's just hard. Tampa Bay a little against Green Bay, but with their receivers, it's hard to pull the trigger on a bet with them. But yeah, so I was kind of struggling a little bit to put the top five that I'm gonna enter into the super contest this week. But that's what I came up with. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, I made my $10 no sweat parlay on FanDuel thanks to your picks, and this week $10 is going to pay me $236. So it typically, with all the against the spread bets, you're in that 1.8, 1.9 range, and so it's going to be around the same point every time. But you know what? If we keep betting $10 every week and you're going to 236, you only got to win once.
That's right. Just one 5 weeks, all it takes.
Yeah, each week I'll be putting in my $10 ticket. It's a no sweat parlay. So for me, I'm basically free rolling on the back of your super contest picks. Hopefully others are out there doing the same thing. I mean, why not? This is free information from somebody who does this for a living. So, I like it there. Survivor pool, or I should call it my eliminator challenge, because remember the Colts not being losers actually helped me in that 1 week. I think I got to go with the Eagles. Looking at these spreads, looking at the games, the Eagles, like you said, they are hot. They should be able to win that game pretty easily. What do you like in Survivor this week?
Well, this is kind of a tough week for Survivor. Well, I mean, hey, the first 2 weeks looked a lot easier than all the teams that we thought were easy wins lost, right? So what do you? But I mean, my formula for Survivor, or a part of it, is looking at, okay, who are the bad teams playing? And I mean, to me, the worst teams are Houston, Chicago, Atlanta, and Seattle. Going into the season, those are the teams I thought were probably the worst teams. And they're all playing each other this week, right? And Buffalo has got a tough game in Miami. And you got good teams like Green Bay and Tampa Bay playing each other. Kansas City's on the road in a difficult spot. They're playing against a motivated, embarrassed team that figures to get healthier this week. So you have just a few options. I mean, obviously my top option's got to be the Bengals. That's my top pick of the week. I can't see any way they lose to the Jets. If they do, they have big problems. I mean, not that maybe they have big problems, but I don't think they do. I think Burrow is an elite quarterback, and they're a motivated team, and the Jets are a team that kind of had a letdown, or figures to have a letdown off of such a ridiculous and unlikely win. So the Bengals that's my top Survivor pick. I also will recommend, the Chargers and the Eagles are the other picks I'm going to spread among my remaining entries. I'd be going a lot more in on the Chargers this week if Herbert were healthy, but he's not. He's going to play, but with I heard fractured rib cartilage is what he has, or something like that. And
I watched the game last weekend, and you watch as he goes to throw the ball, he just any sort of motion, he just didn't look comfortable. And when you express that much emotion on the field, these guys are hurt. These guys, they're tough, but he looked like he was banged up.
Yeah, he had a couple throws where he looked all right, and he had several throws where he just was, wincing. It was absolutely painful. And now they might be able to freeze it. They might be able to give him some painkillers, but I still, this is something that could linger with the Chargers this whole season. But I think, Jacksonville, off of that shocking shutout win at home, going out west, this would be if Herbert were healthy, this would have been one of my top picks of the week. If the Chargers were -7, I don't think they would have been if he were healthy. But even at -9.5, I still would have gone with it. But that's not how it is. I still think they win the game. And as far as Philadelphia goes, we've kind of talked about that already. They're just a far better team than Washington.
I think that's just a fact. I think the Eagles, you convinced me earlier, and I think that they're my Survivor pick. Hopefully they hold up. Into football.
Yeah, and the other thing for the Eagles is there are a whole bunch of people that are still on this team from when Wentz was there, so they're going to know him, and they're going to be able to know his tendencies and they should be able to exploit that and win this fairly handily.
When you mentioned Wentz there, actually, I had to scour the waiver wire to find a replacement for Trey Lance in one of my 2 leagues. And Trey Lance was my plan all year round. It was find a hot new running quarterback and get that mobile quarterback in there for fantasy points. So I got Kirk Cousins on one side, filling him in, and then I got Trevor Lawrence, and I grabbed Carson Wentz, just thinking, you know what? Maybe this Washington offense is for real. I mean, maybe it's because they're going to be behind so often they'll just be throwing the ball a lot. Could be that. But, I don't know.
Having a quarterback on a bad team is not necessarily a bad play for fantasy because, like you said, they are going to be behind a lot. I mean, you can throw for 350 yards and lose handily. It happens all the time. Right? I mean, Tua, now they ended up coming back to win, but he was throwing the ball every down in that second half because they were down by so much.
Right.
Not that Miami's a bad team. They most certainly are not. But yeah, you get some teams some of these teams like Wentz has the ability to complete passes. He's not a lower tier quarterback. He's not an upper tier quarterback anymore. He hasn't delivered on that potential, but he can complete passes. And if they're throwing every down, I mean, I didn't look at what he threw for against Detroit, but they were down the whole game. So he must have thrown a lot. What I mean, do you know
these quarterbacks become fantasy relevant? I get that's sort of what I was thinking was, do I grab a guy that, is going to manage a game, or do I grab a guy who's going to be losing and just be having to throw the ball? And you know what? Garbage time is still, it counts for the same as everything else. So why not grab guys that cash in there?
A touchdown that makes it 41-17 is worth the same as a touchdown that wins the game for the team. And those game managers are going to be somebody like 49ers with Trey Lance and Garoppolo. We're talking about a more balanced attack there, so they're not going to get the opportunities to pass. I mean, and teams that are leading a lot are not going to throw a lot in the second half. They're gonna lean on the run, and they're gonna have a more balanced attack. So
unless you're Josh Allen on Monday Night Football and you just want to rack up the stats with Stephon Diggs.
But that's a little bit different because the Bills are so reliant on Josh Allen. I mean, how many you look at? I mean, he accounts for a good chunk of their running game in addition to everything he does with his arm, right? And I mean, he is the backbone of that offense. So that's a bit of a different story. We're not talking about, a game manager here. We're talking about just a savage, just a guy who's just going to dominate. When I
have one of my MVP bets I was on Josh Allen being MVP, and I think I was actually looking at the cash outs on some of my bets, and some of them are just awful. Like parking lot bets that have like a 60-cent cash out on a $5 bet. They're just, I made some pretty bad bold predictions in the preseason, but one that might hold up is that Josh Allen MVP pick. He's looking really good.
Hard to imagine he doesn't win the MVP if he stays healthy. I mean, you never know what anybody else is going to do. But no, I can't see anybody but him winning the MVP if he plays this season out.
Yeah. Well, I watched Red Zone last week. I feel like this week will be a week where I maybe tune into the Bills and Dolphins, watch the Packers and the Bucks, watch a couple of games sort of start to finish. Enjoy the games yourself, Dean, and we'll catch you again next week.
Sounds great, Chris. You enjoy the games as well. Let's look forward to doing this again next week.
Cheers.